This is the Rising Goddess Podcast, and I'm your host, Michelle Torrance. This is a space where when we start diving deep, we're talking spiritual, mental, and physical. We're getting real and connecting with ourselves and others in the most intimate ways. We'll be talking all things sacred sexual, relationship building, womb healing, connection, and connecting with and through our bodies, how to use our sexual and sensual energies to create, manifest, and heal our lives in our individual and collective ancient feminine lines, while intertwining our healing and connection with the divine masculine. We'll learn from amazing humans who take time and share their wisdom and sacred healing magic. Rising humans who are here in this world to be healers, teachers, guides, priestesses, warriors, shamans, and all divine sisters and brothers in rising. We'll get witchy, sassy, sexy, and saucy, talking all things that align us with our true nature and authentic selves, creating a community of divine feminine and masculine rising to be a massive part in this shift of world healing. So grab some green juice, light some cannabis, get your blankets, or sit by the fire. Let's rise up together. Catch you on the inside, dolls. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Rising Goddess Radio. Today's episode is really such a great and interesting episode. I had such a great time. I had such a great time talking to Arden Leigh, our guest. We really dove into some great topics and really just kind of led me to talk to a few more people and get some other guests on the show to really break open some of these topics. And so today with Arden Leigh, we are going to talk about BDSM. We're talking about porn. We're talking about repatterning thought processes. We're talking about healing through magic and creating reality with magic. So it's just a wonderful, fun conversation. So if you're not familiar with Arden Leigh is the founder of intuitive guidance coaching forum, Sacred Sirens. She's also the creator of the Repatterning Project, the front woman of indie rock band Arden and the Wolves, and the host of web series Peace Talks. She penned the 2011 dating tome, The New Rules of Attraction, is now working on a companion guide to trauma healing based on the lessons of her own journey. And she teaches the practice of magic as used in self-empowered reality creation and makes weird talks about it all over YouTube. Her energy is fantastic. Her passion is contagious, and I just love everything about Arden. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Definitely follow and come check us out over on Rising Goddess Radio on Facebook, as well as come join the Rising Goddess group on Facebook as well. We're diving deep into these topics as well as so many more. Also, make sure you can follow Arden over on any of her platforms at Arden Sirens or visit sacredsirens.com. So I hope you enjoy this. Have a great time. Sit back, relax, or focus and drive, or whatever it is that you are doing. Enjoy this, and I'll catch you on the inside. Later. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rising Goddess Radio. I love all you humans out there. Today, we are talking with a beautiful goddess who I kind of stalked a while ago. And if you listen to the intro, which you should have listened to, you'll know a bit more about her. But I'm going to do just a slight interview. This is Arden Leigh. I call her Arden Leigh. A lie. I had a feeling, I could feel it as soon as it was coming out of my mouth. I was like, I'm saying it wrong.
Oh no, you got it right. I was just saying hi.
Okay, good. So she's here with us today, and what drew me to Arden was actually a comment on somebody else's social media post that just kind of got me turned on. I was intrigued by her answer and her response and everything. And so then I just kind of started stalking her. And what really drew me to just kind of dive in and ask her to be on the show here was a post about porn, which we'll touch onto a topic of it. It's not the main topic that we're going to talk about, but it was really her expression and her truth and her realness and her rawness on that post that just drew me in. And you listeners out there, you know I'm all about non-judgment, non-criticism. And so her energy is all about this. So long ass intro. I keep talking. Let me shut the fuck up. Everybody, welcome Arden. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Oh my gosh, I was so delighted to get your invitation that day too, because I got so much hate on that post about porn. And
Mm,
I'm not even in porn. I've shot nudes before. I've shot content that would be considered adult content, but I'm really not a porn performer. And but I've known so many in my life, and there was so much anti-porn sentiment floating around that I just couldn't stand it anymore. I've had so many lovers who are in the adult industry. So many of my clients, my friends are in the adult industry, and man, I couldn't do it, honestly. I would not mind having sex on camera in the right circumstances. Like, I would not, that's not something I would be shy about, but
mhm.
I would not be able to deal with all the hate I would get on Twitter.
Oh my gosh, I know. Well, and starting off with this, it's funny because porn is something that I'm diving into in my Rising Goddess group, and we're getting started to kind of really talk about it and bring out the shame that is surrounding women around porn. When you were talking about in that post, like if you have a problem with it, then stand up and say something to the producers, talk about how they're not getting paid, make sure that the safety is going on. I mean, we look at Christy Mack and we see what happened with her ex-boyfriend. I mean, I've been following porn since Jenna Jameson. I got my husband turned on to Jenna, and so understanding the industry, I was raised in Vegas 27 years, so I'm all about empower women, sexual power women, but I was running from it my whole life, which
Sure.
how
Yeah.
what my magical powers is what I was running from. But um so I just think it's so important to understand and remove the judgment, and that's what I love so much about it. And so that's why I really think all of you listeners out there are really going to love her. So we'll make sure she gives all of her social media stuff so you guys can follow her and everything too. But let's get into knowing about you, enough about me. Who is Arden? Who were you before? What experience or life changing, if anything, did happen or how did you transition to who you are today?
Oh my goodness. I could spend like about 3 podcasts worth telling that story.
I love it.
So I'll try to give the abridged version.
Okay.
When I graduated NYU, I went pretty quickly into the professional BDSM industry. I was a pro dom, a professional dominatrix for about 4 years. That in itself was kind of a wild ride. I was also a 24/7 submissive during in my personal life
Mm,
during those years. So I was living that really 24/7. The house where I worked was eventually shut down by the NYPD in a bunch of like a big sting, a bunch of raids that they did this one year. It was like the year of the Elliot Spitzer crisis in New York, where
mm,
our governor was caught with escorts, and the city suddenly decided, we need money, so let's crack down and confiscate all these funds, and it's also going to make our public image look better now that we have to do this kind of
mhm,
public image cleanup after our governor or whatever. So that definitely gave me a lot of things. One is firsthand experience with the stigma of being a sex worker, because I was outed in the New York Post when I went to try and bail my boyfriend slash dominant slash boss who owned the joint out of jail.
oh my gosh, right?
So I'm like, oh, there I am. Like I'm in my mid-20s at that point, and I've got a picture of me as dressed up as a dominatrix, like literally in the New York Post. So again, even when I talk about porn, I'm not a porn performer, but
Mhm,
I know what it's like to be feared and hated by people who don't understand the work that I'm doing and the level of integrity that I'm trying to bring to it.
mm,
So I learned that, and then I also learned a lot about men and a lot about sexuality, and I learned a lot about how much people were not saying about their dark desires. You learn,
mm.
like, you can walk past some dude on Wall Street in his suit, and I could, like, it's like the superpower where I could look at him and be like, oh, I know what he's into.
Right. My husband's good at that.
Yeah, exactly. And it was, as someone who was really sheltered for a long time, it was a real, sexually anyway, like I was a virgin until I was 22 and a half.
Oh wow. Mhm,
Yeah, exactly. And then I really went from 0 to 60, because at that point in my life, I wanted to destroy everything that I was like, I was like, this has been going on too long. Like, I really just wanted to destroy my innocence. It was very
mhm,
like, was very like Lana Del Rey before Lana Del Rey.
Right. I totally get it.
Yeah. And then, you know, coming out of that, so much of what I learned marketing myself as a pro dom, I started applying to the world of pickup. You know, I was studying pickup kind of for funsies. My boyfriend and I had both gotten certified in NLP around the same time, neuro linguistic programming. Had a
Yes.
big, yeah, it had a big crossover into the pickup community. There was sort of like the light side and the dark side of NLP, whether you were using it to change your own mindsets to get different results, or whether you were using like, you know, hypnotic language patterns on other people to try and get them to sleep with you, or you know,
Right. No, absolutely. You've got either your Sith or your Jedi. So,
yeah,
which one are you going to tap
exactly.
into?
Exactly. Yeah. And
Hmm.
I played with the light and the dark, you know, in that world for a while. And I came up with, between my, you know, between working as a dom and marketing myself, you know, as a purveyor of fantasy and all the stuff I was studying in pickup, I came up with a pickup curriculum that was designed with women's relationship goals in mind. And it was really this idea that, you know, even though I was willing to go to some of those dark places and learn those things, you know, everything I was putting forward was like, I was so transparent about what I was doing. And so, you know, I really managed to approach it with like, all right, so I'm playing a game, but you know I'm playing a game. And if I'm playing this game with you, then I want both of us to be able to win. So I
Right.
managed to, you know, to kind of take these seduction tactics and turn them into like, am I manipulating you? In a way, yes, but what I'm manipulating you is I'm actually manipulating you to feel good. And I'm doing that because I want you to return to me and feel good again. You know, I'm not doing it because I want to have some weird like ego power trip or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe I do, but even in like, even in my like having that, it's like the ego power trip of the validation that you really like me or whatever. It was like, I think a lot of pickup, what people didn't understand is that it did come from this place of insecurity or unworthiness, or like worrying that we weren't enough without doing all this stuff. And
Yes.
for me, I definitely know that that was true. And then like, so then fast forward to about 2014, when the concept of emotional labor starts coming into the cultural mainstream. And I start realizing that I've created this whole lifestyle and career based around seduction. And I'm actually really quite good at it, but I keep getting like kind of taken advantage of. And the truth is that no one I'm dating really understands how much effort I'm putting into making our relationships like this exciting, suspenseful, like mystery dinner theater all the time, you
Right.
know?
Right. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, it was so fun. It was so fun to do, but it was also so unreciprocal. You know, it was like, oh my gosh. And I'd end up, you know, when you have this belief that you have to be extra in order to be worthy and you have to do all this stuff, then like what I know now is like you're naturally going to attract people who are narcissists who want to take from you. You know, you're
Yes.
not going to attract that person who just wants you just exactly the way you are, who wants to show up and be there for you even when you are in sweatpants. Or I don't even own sweatpants anymore. Like that's how hardcore I got about it, you know?
Right.
like like I threw out all my sweatpants. I was like, forget it. I want to if I'm going to be comfortable, I'll lounge in like silk pajamas. Like I want to be this seductive archetype at all times. Like I really committed hardcore to it. Uh,
Yes.
and it was a lot of work. Like people, you know, I think there were a lot of people who were, you know, if they've either thought I was like full of myself, or they thought I was like, or they thought I had like this perfect life, or they thought that I was being manipulative. I'm like, no, you guys, I put a lot of effort into like this experience curation. That essentially what I'm doing is like, you know, I'm doing like this almost like live immersive theater for everyone I'm dating. And I'm trying to be transparent about it because everyone knows who I am. You know, it's not like
Right.
I'm sneaking any, like I wrote a whole book about it. I'm like, if you want to know what I'm doing with you, I literally wrote a book, $15 on Amazon.
Right.
I'm not trying to be shady with you. We all know what the deal is. We're
Right.
just like, I'm doing this and we're having fun. So yeah, but when I realized that it was getting me those results where I was actually quite often, you know, I was attracting the people that I wanted to attract, but they were using me or taking advantage of me or just not appreciating me or not seeing me, or sometimes they would see me, but you know, like my last ex really really understood what I was doing, really grokked it on a really deep level, and had so many similar archetypes within himself as well.
Mm.
But ultimately he still, but ultimately, like, he was so self-sabotaging that he, you know, he hit me where it hurt. He was basically like, I know you're doing this because you're terrified of being abandoned. And then he literally dumped me over an email right before my birthday. It was like,
Oh my God.
so at that point, I had to like finally admit to myself, I was like, you know what, maybe this seduction stuff, as fun as it is, and as much as I am getting the results that I've been kind of aiming for on the surface, you know, and this is where we can start talking about magic. Like, you always get what you ask for. It
Mm.
just never shows up in the way that you think it's going to, or rarely anyway, until
Right.
you get good at calibrating your asks and your intentions to the
Yes.
results that you want.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's kind of what I teach now, because I realized how much I was like, I was actually getting what I was asking for. I was this like magnificent seductive archetype that people were very attracted to, but they were all kind of like, they were all just in for the joyride, or they were, you know, they were in because for the fantasy, or whatever. And I
Right.
realized how what I was doing was actually getting me those results. So after that relationship ended, I just tore everything down. I didn't even know what it was going to look like at the time, but I threw up my hands and I was like, okay, universe, like, I surrender. Clearly I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Right.
Because I literally just like, I'm supposed to be this amazing seductress, and you know, I've had this wild, intense, torrid, passionate love affair with this, you know, famous filmmaker, that on paper looks like it's so exciting, and, you know, I was a muse and all that other shit, you know, that people think is like, it's like what we're told is supposed to be the thing that we're supposed to want to do, you
Right.
know. And but I was like, I'm in pain. I was like, this
Mm.
sucks. Like, I'm out of my mind, you know. And by the end of that relationship, I could tell I was like, it was like, even some of my friends were like, Arden, have you ever hung out with an addict? Like, you're acting like an addict. You know, I was like,
Mm.
I had been like operant conditioning programmed to like depend on this person's affection because they were so inconsistent with me. So yeah, I basically, I tore it all down. I surrendered. I said, I don't know what this is going to look like, but I do know that there is a huge discrepancy between the people who are actually showing up for me in my life and the people that I'm curating all these experiences for, who actually aren't reciprocating to me. And also I was like, I think I'm being an asshole to some of my friends because I've gotten so like obsessed with you know, with getting these results in my relationships or whatever, and always curating things that to the point where like I'm maybe not being present with the people who actually are just showing up for me, who
Mm-hmm.
are like showing up behind the scenes. You know, it's like our real intimacy happens with like the people that we're sending the screenshots to of our text messages. You know, like
Yeah.
when you take a screenshot of a text and you send it to your friend, you're like, oh my God, he just said this. I'm like, that's where my relationships are happening. Everything else I'm doing is it's just been this theater. And I don't regret it, because, you know, it's like, it's not a bad way to spend your 20s. Like, it's really not.
No,
You
absolutely
know?
not. No, it's definitely, I mean, we're here to experience life, let life live through us. And all of us have a different experience in what we're going to do in our 20s is definitely, I mean, you could even hear Gary Vaynerchuk say that shit. He's
Yeah.
like, do nothing for 8 years and live life doing whatever the fuck you want, you know? But I totally agree. I mean, the experience is bringing you to who you are and continuously lining you up closer and closer and closer to your higher self of who you are to be in this experience. And so I find it absolutely fascinating with it. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. So that's kind of what led me to this huge transition I've been on for the past 2 years that I feel like has finally settled. And I've just finished my first 8-week course teaching all of the deconstruction that I taught
Mm.
myself, you know, about changing your algorithm. Essentially, my algorithm when I was teaching seduction was, if I provide people with, you know, your algorithm is always like an if then statement. It's like, if I provide people with these exciting experiences and make myself into this mythology of being like the most attractive woman in the world, which, by the way, like, I'm just a totally normal human being. Like, I may have a couple of like decent genetic things going for me, but like I said, I was, you know, I was a virgin till I was 22. I was not just like, you know, I was not like Aphrodite rising from the sea or anything.
Right.
Like, I'm just a person, you know. I just created this mythology around myself. And I was like, if I do all these things to be attractive and be desirable, then people will value me and want to protect me and will treat me well, because they will want to, like, my idea in my head, as I realized, you know, as it became more conscious, was this idea of like, if you had a goose who was laying you golden eggs every month, like, why would you choke that goose out and like kill it, you know?
Right.
But I literally, like, I did, I had relationships that were so toxic that there was a point where someone actually like had their hands around their throat, you know, like almost like really looking like they were about to kill me, you know. They let up after about 10 seconds or so, but like I saw that murderous rage in their eyes, you know, and I was just like, why are you doing this? Like, I've put so much effort into making myself into this Maserati that you now have a lease on, and you're deciding to drive it into a wall, you
Oh my
know?
God. I just want to stop right there, because that is really something. I love visuals. I really do. So you're like really speaking my love language right now. But
Oh, yay.
let's stop this right here, because I want so many women out there to understand that you were doing everything that you could to be this person on the outside, to be this expressive, to be this type of thing for this person to, and like you said, oh my God, they had a fucking lease on you and they
Yeah.
were running you into the wall. And there's so many women out there that are going through this. To me, that's to me, when your friends were talking to you about, being with an addict or being an addiction, I come from addict background. So codependency is the main addiction I feel that is running rampant through humanity. And so learning how to heal that and understand the healthy boundaries of dependency can do that. And so just hearing that statement, there's just so many women out there that are throwing everything out into this external thing to be this for somebody and letting somebody just ram them into a fucking wall.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
know the worth, know the understanding that your worthiness is not through finding that through that external source. So it was that I just had to stop you there, because it just like, oh God, it pulled me out through my heart. And I was like, let's talk for a minute. Uh,
Yes, yes. No, absolutely. I'm so glad you did. And you're so right. You're so right. And you know, for years I actually justified my codependence. And I didn't know that I was codependent
sure.
because, you know, I live alone. I pay my rent, you
Mhm.
know, you wouldn't see anything on the surface that looked codependent. I was
Right.
like, it's almost like someone who's a really functional alcoholic, you know, and lies to themselves and was like, I don't have a problem. And you know, there wasn't a model for that for me. There wasn't a model for what, um, and I still think that codependence for me, even though I wouldn't argue with that as a term. I actually think the more accurate term is I was addicted to surrender. I
Mm,
was addicted to the feeling of giving my agency over to another person. And I identified that as a kink orientation. I identified that as being submissive.
right.
And I would have said at the time that someone who was like, just, you know, had a safe container for submissive play for a
Mhm.
couple hours, you know, like, or whatever, like, who wasn't living 24/7 completely giving their agency to their dominant partner. Like,
Mhm.
remember, I bailed my partner out of jail. He's still paying me back the 25 grand he owes me, like, you know, after I moved him in with me and he like briefly tried to kill me. You know, it was like, how bad did it have to get before I was finally like, this is not this is not working, you know. But
Right.
I was addicted to that. It was, do you ever see Jessica Jones?
No, I have not.
Okay, I've only actually seen the first two episodes because I had to stop. But there's this thing in it where the villain is like this. He's like this mind control villain, and he gets
Mm,
people to do his bidding. And when you see the people he's controlled to do his bidding, like, you can't stop them. They will claw at the walls in order to do the thing that they're told to do. And I saw that, and I was like, holy fuck, that's what it's like. And the scary thing about it is, like, you would describe that to someone and you would be like, it would be like I was like literally clawing the walls to do the thing I was told to do. And they'd probably be like, oh my God, that was horrible. And I was actually looking at that like, no, I miss it. I actually really miss it. And it's kind of
mm,
like, if you've ever read Russell Brand's essay, I think he wrote this essay, I think it was shortly after Amy Winehouse's death, and he was writing about addiction. And he
mm,
said he watched a video of himself before he got sober in, like, you know, down and out in some, like, you know, crack house flat in London. And there he is, like, smoking crack off of some tinfoil, and he's just like, you know, and he's like, you would think that I'd be looking at this video being like, wow, now I get to tour the world doing comedy and I'm in such a better place and I have a ton of money and like, isn't this way better? And he's like, no, I watched that and I was jealous of the former version of me who still got to smoke crack,
yeah,
you
I
know?
totally understand that. Absolutely. That's definitely the mindset of daily recovering from addiction on that. There's times where I think back of the times where I had amazing times with my Coke, and I think of the stories and I think of the things, and it's just a matter of understanding that that does happen. And addiction is another topic that I'm going to talk on, because I feel like there's so much judgment around addiction that
there's people who don't understand it.
Oh, so much, so much.
Yeah. And that's why I love Russell Brand too. And so the fact with, with him going around and him really really trying to explain addiction in his terms where people are a bit more lax and open, because comedy does that,
Yeah, exactly. I just started reading Unbroken Brain by Maya Salovitz, who's one of the leading authors on addiction. And she argues that addiction is actually a learned behavior, like it's a learning disorder. It's basically that same operant conditioning is you can learn it and you can also unlearn it. And that's why, it's not the substance itself. I've talked to other addicts since then. They're like, it can be anything. People, the biggest frustration for me is when people say like, are having debates over which substances are addictive or not addictive, like habit forming or not habit forming. And
I'm like, gym can be addictive.
Exactly.
Kale can be addictive. I mean, just because it's good for you, you can still have an unhealthy attachment to it. That's what it is. It's the attachment. And I believe that. I'm going to grab that book. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I just started it, but I love her voice on it. And I love, everything she says is just so smart. And I love the work of Johan Hari as well, Hari. He's the one who wrote that Huffington Post article and did that TED talk about the opposite of addiction is connection.
Oh gosh. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. It's basically like he talks about this experiment that a guy named Bruce Alexander did. And they did this classic experiment a long time ago where, they put a rat in a cage and they give it like the cocaine water, and it's like, and of course, like the rat gets addicted to cocaine, like no shit. And Bruce Alexander was the first person to be like, you know what, this rat might be getting addicted to cocaine because we have him in this little square cage with nothing else to do. So what if we take these rats and we put them in, we got a couple rats addicted to some cocaine, but then we put them in this place that we called Rat Park. And it was like this great, like everything a rat could possibly want, like mazes and wheels and other rats and all different kinds of food. And they found that the rats who were addicted to cocaine, when they got to like have fun and play and do other things, that they like 90% of them no longer wanted the cocaine water.
Yeah. And that's it's funny that you do that, because I mean, I can relate to that too. Because when Coke was just one of the things that I did, but I was on speed when I met my husband a long time ago, and he didn't know I was doing it, but he gave me he was like, look, it's either drugs or me, and I was like, well, fuck this shit, let's go. And that, it just rang true as soon as you were talking about that, when you said, connection is really what it is. And that's what that's it right there.
Yeah.
Oh God, you're like blowing my fucking mind.
Thank you. It's been an intense 2 years for me, because I really dove in and I learned, I learned everything that I could. The moment for me that was actually really defining was, there was I picked up this guy, because I was still like, I was still sort of in my pickup artist mode, and he was really attractive, and I'd known his his artwork before, like his creative work as an artist, and the next morning as we're talking, he said something about, he was like 2 months sober himself. He was like, he's like, yeah, I've got like 2 months of sobriety under my belt. And he tells me about this, and he's like, the thing is, I could go out and I could have a drink and be fine. I could have 3 drinks and be fine. I could have 5 drinks and be fine. But at some point, I'm not going to stop at 5, and I'm going to wake up 3 days later, like passed out in the snow, like missed flights, broken contracts,
right, a full-on binge happening.
Like, yeah, like all of a sudden I wake up, my credit cards are maxed out and my life is in a shambles or whatever. And the funny thing is, I wasn't even thinking before I responded. I was actually doing this out of like habit of seductive conversation, rapport building. So I'm not even thinking about myself at this point. What I'm thinking of unconsciously, this is just something that I have sort of kind of trained myself to do over time, is when someone opens up and shares something vulnerable with me, I like to do the same in return, in order to kind of say like, hey, we're both in this together. And also, I'm not judging you. I'm not going to compare my experience to yours, but hey, like you're not alone,
Sure. Absolutely.
So what I said is, I was like, well, I feel I can kind of relate to that. I don't have a problem with substances. I've never have, and I'm lucky in that regard. But, you know, in my relationships when I was kinky, you know, in terms of BDSM, in terms of what I thought of as my submission, I could, in fact, I wasn't even phrasing it in the past tense because I still identified as submissive at the time. I was like, I can identify this with being submissive actually, because like I could give someone a foot rub and be fine. I can make them dinner and be fine. I could give up my entire sexual agency for a whole weekend and be fine. But one day I'm not going to stop there. And then, you know, however many months later, I'm, you know, I've spent $25,000 outing my, you know, bailing my boyfriend out of jail, and I'm outed in the New York Post, and all of a sudden he's moved in with me and is breaking my furniture and trying to kill me.
Right.
And and the guy looks at me and he's like, wow, yeah, that is the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, it is, isn't it? And,
you're like, oh shit, growth happens.
Oh god damn. Exactly. And let me tell you, like that's how quick change can happen when you set that intention, and when you say like I surrender to the universe or whatever. I'm not gonna lie, it's embarrassing how vulnerable it is. Like, you know, and the person and I are like, we're still friends, and I've told him like hey, by the way, some of the conversations that we had early on really, you know, really helped me kind of see like where some of my issues were. But like it's embarrassing the extent to where it's like, oh my god, I you know, there I was out like, you know, trying to like pick up a dude at a party, and you know, and all of a sudden he drops this one bomb that basically invites me to deconstruct literally everything in my life. Like,
right.
Like what?
I love how universe works. Goddess is like, here you go.
Oh, exactly.
Here's a little fun, you know, niblet that you can, you know, have fun, and then all of a sudden completely destroy and deconstruct everything about your life.
Oh yeah, it was like gummy vitamins. Like the universe knew exactly what to put in the Arden trap. You know, it was like I was out with one of my little pickup proteges, you know, and she like pointed him out, and I was like, oh yeah, I was like, oh yeah, I've heard of that dude. Like I was like, oh, I'm gonna go show off and whatever, and then just boom, right? It's like I was like, oh my god, and of course, you know, it's very important to say that, you know, I set that intention.
Sure.
I obviously set the intention to heal. And that person was the messenger, you know, but that's certainly not nothing. So
no, I love it. And I love it when stories happen like that, you know, because you think an experience will happen, and just like, you know, and out there for, you know, you listening, you'll think that this one small, maybe natural, normal experience that's happening in your life will all of a sudden completely change your life, because just like she said, she had the intention of healing, and it didn't matter how, it didn't matter when, it didn't matter who. It was the fact that the outcome, the intention, the vibration that she was on and going to was healing. And it happened like that. And I love stories like that. It's so fantastic. And you know, I'm sitting here as writing notes about everything, what you do. You know, you're a coach, you're a writer, you're founder of Sirens. I'm looking at your pictures and you're singing. You're a shamanic rock star. Can you tell?
thank you.
Tell us about this. I guess just shamanic rock star. I'm just like in awe of it. I love all the pictures of you singing and stuff too. You're looking just fly as fuck. But how did you come to that? Did you just embody that one day after this growth? Did it just kind of morph into it from it? Was it prior to before this, and then you just kind of expanded as you went from that deconstruction and then reconstructed an entire new existence and creation of your life? Or
well, the interesting thing is I was already making music like back in New York as early as like 2012, and you know, I released 2 EPs previous to that, and the funny thing is if you listen to those first 2, there's a lot of songs in there that are like about, you know, like whiskey and casual sex and like getting fucked over and whatever, and I was still treating my band as a vanity project too. And when I set on my healing journey, you know, as you know, the universe shows up for us in a lot of ways, and it's kind of up to us how much we want to engage with the spiritual aspect of our healing or not. I try not to be preachy about spirituality, but it's also, I realize I'm overcompensating because I want to be preachy about spirituality,
right?
because it's worked for me, you know.
Exactly.
But when I started getting into really connecting with what I'll refer to as spirit, for lack of a better word, and setting intentions and having things show up, if we want to put it in like much more layman's terms, like setting intentions and having things show up right away. When I started uncovering my trauma healing, it just went so deep. It was like I opened a closet and all these boxes fell out that I had just been completely repressing or denying the whole time, because again, my life up until that point had been so much about creating that theater that if something didn't mesh with that picture, I was just kind of like, well, I don't need to deal with that. It's fine. As long as there's no physical consequences, you know, it doesn't matter if I've, you know, if my ex tried to kill me at one point, you know, like it's just like, no one was there. No one saw it. Didn't happen.
Right.
And when I started working with an energetic alchemist, she doesn't like the word healer. I'm very careful about that. I work with a woman named Catherine Girardi, who is an emotional alchemist. She's just a pure genius. And this one day we're doing a session together, and she's tuned into my energy, and she goes, "Holy shit, whose hands are around your throat?" And I was like, fuck, well, I guess I did a terrible job of hiding that, right?
Right.
So when I know, I was like, oh, okay, actually, you know, so when that happened, and I really saw how much digging out I had to do, going really all the way back through my early childhood, all these things that had happened that I tried to tell myself is like, I'm a tough cookie, I'm fine, I'm smart, I'm over it, it's whatever. And I was like, no, I really do have to address all of this patterning. And so I stopped asking, like, are we there yet? I was like, because when I'm in that process, I'm like, this sucks. I fucking hate it. Like, is it over? Is it over? I kept seeing, like, I felt like I was seeing an end in sight. And it would just, every time I felt like the end was in sight, it was like the chasm would just widen and just deepen more and more.
Yes.
So, so I finally said, okay, I surrender. I'm going to stop asking, are we there yet? And, but I was like, look, I've always been like the gifted student. I've always been on the fast track. So just, you know, like, give it to me straight. Like, I will do the work. I don't want to cut any corners.
Definitely a Ruby for sure on a personality, on the gem test. That's what it is. That's who you are. You embody a Ruby. Totally didn't mean to interrupt you there. I mean,
oh, that's okay. I actually had a call come in my phone. So hopefully that didn't.
No, it didn't. I didn't hear nothing.
Oh, great. Okay, yeah. Cool. Oh, sorry about that. So there I am, and I'm basically like, okay, I surrender, like, but put me on the fast track, you know. Mm-hmm. And a friend of mine who was a shaman basically moved back to California within a month, and offered me to come to the ceremonies he was holding, like, for free. And I ended up being able to do 10 plant medicine ceremonies within the following 5 months, which is exactly what I had asked for. Yeah. I was like, I'm ready. I'm like, I don't want this to hurt. Like, don't show me these lessons through like a whole bunch of pain showing up in my life. Like, I'm already cooperating with you, you know? But I was like, but I'm not afraid to shy away from the work. So let's, you know,
let's have a fun way about that. I love how you put that, because I think so many people believe that the work has to be scary, it has to be mean, it has to be painful, it has to be this suffering thing. And there is suffering throughout life. That's just part of the yin yang, in and out, you know, we live in polarities. But the fact that you asked for the experience, for this growth, you're working with it, you want to do the healing, you want to do the process, you want to do the work, and you're just asking for it to happen in a non-painful way. And I think people realize that they can ask that. You can ask that when you see your angel numbers, or you're seeing your signs and your guides or something, they're telling you, ask. You can ask for what it is that you want. You are worthy for what it is that you want. And she was worthy of healing and seeing that healing through non-pain. So sorry, I just kind of went on a little rant.
Oh, no, that was terrific. And yeah, I absolutely agree. So it was actually in the container of that ceremony that my shaman asked me, he's like, I want you to sing. And I was like, okay. And I was really weirdly shy about it, which is strange considering I'd already been singing on stage. I'd already been, you know, this like kind of like whiskey and rock and roll archetype. So, so sure enough, I sang, and he, you know, he channeled the Archangel Michael for me at one point. He's like speaking in tongues. And as the Archangel Michael, he says, he translates this and he says, sing, your voice carries the angelic chords. So I went back into ceremony and I kind of asked what that meant. And I saw that the angelic nature was, it's not about the voice, it's about the message, and it's about the genius of the flow state. It's about that that state that you're in where everything just like flows and clicks and is beautiful. And when I sang in ceremony, I could feel that. I could actually step outside myself and see the beauty of my own creative expression for the first time. And weirdly enough, my voice also started getting better. Like if you listen to my albums, like, in chronological order, there's just no question that my voice is better. And I wasn't hiring a teacher or anything either, which was super super weird for me. I was like, holy shit, how is this happening? Like it would feel like I'd get in the car after, like coming back from ceremony, and it would feel like I was like in, like all of a sudden I'd upgraded my car from like a Nissan to a Lamborghini, and I had like all this more horsepower. And actually, like, it would be awkward at first because I'd press the pedal the way that I normally did, and it would actually kind of crack. It would break. It would be like too much power behind it. I'd be like, oh wow, this doesn't take as much effort as it used to. It was like super weird. So now I joke that God is my voice teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. Fuck yeah, I would totally believe that. And I'm reading Quantum Healing by Deepak, and
Oh, nice.
yeah, it's a fantastic book, and I keep getting stuck on it because I have like 12 books I'm like going back and forth with. That's my brain.
Oh my God, same.
I'm like, okay, let's focus on one fucking book at a time. But he talks about how, like, I mean, we know that our skin sheds, right? Like every 7 years or stuff like that. But every single cell in our body continuously shifts. And every time we go through an ascension, which obviously was what you did, we go through an ascension, we actually embody and become the more aligned and higher vibration entity and being and human of that existence. And so we physically change. The sound of the voice, my voice has changed. I don't sing. I mean, well, I do, but we don't record any of my singing.
Oh,
The shower does, but that's about it.
maybe there's your next growth point.
Yeah. Hey, it's funny. I'm always singing. I create songs, but it's definitely my gifts are there to support the ones that have the angelic voices. But now I completely, oh, there we go. But we're always constantly changing. So it makes complete sense that your voice changed, that your voice gets better because you're coming closer and closer and closer and closer in alignment with the highest vibrational being of yourself. And that's perfection, because, we already are perfect. So
yeah, it's definitely weird. It's like if you had told me that trauma healing was going to make me a better singer. It's just like all the benefits of this work that I'm doing are just showing up in ways that I had not even expected. It was just so weird and so bizarre. And at the same time, I was also studying Magick. I started sort of like informally being mentored by Grant Morrison, who is a chaos magician who coined the term hypersigil. And the idea of a hypersigil is that it is a narrative work that that essentially manipulates the future. It's like you're writing a story, you're putting yourself in the story, and then the story comes true, is like the very bare bones definition that I can give of that concept.
Yeah.
So then I realized, I was like, I've been writing all these songs about like being taken advantage of and getting my heart broken, and like all these like my last EP before the one I just released was called It Looks Like Trouble. Like I literally have a song called It Looks Like Trouble. It's like, oh God, like I'm gonna get my heart broken. I'm gonna like, you're like this badass dude in leather pants is just gonna like destroy my life, and all like, well, yeah, no shit. Once I started understanding Magick, it's like,
Right.
Of course that was happening. So when I started working on the next album, I was like, okay, I'm going to I'm going to start rewriting my story. And the next song I wrote was called Another Year of Rain, after I kind of made this decision. And it was essentially where there was someone who was showing up in my life who, it was one of those lessons from the universe, like, oh, this is the exact same situation as the last one kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I wrote a song where, and I was really afraid I was going to give into temptation, because it was like, It hadn't been since my ex, since I had like really felt super turned on and wanted to sleep with someone. It's like, it's funny, it's like for as sex positive as I am, I'm not really that motivated to have sex unless there's, you know, a really compelling reason, whether it's, you know, whether it's for the adventure or an interesting story, or, you know, or that attraction, you know, or hopefully that actual compatibility and intimacy. But I don't just feel like, you know, for someone who was a pickup artist, like I don't really, you know, yeah, I can decide very quickly that I have a really good, compelling reason to have sex with someone if I'm inspired to,
Right.
but it's still pretty rare. So I was like, oh my God, but I like, maybe I just deserve to have something nice. Who cares if he's like, you know, lying to this other girl or whatever about their relationship status? Like, why do I always have to be the responsible one, you know?
Right.
And I was like, I was really at a point where I was like, fuck it, it's just going to happen. And then I realized, I was like, no, this is exactly the situation that I came out of before, that I said I wasn't going to do, you know, like right after I had set my intention to heal. So I was like, what the fuck am I doing? So I was like, all right, I'm going to write a diss track about this dude, because if I write a diss track about him, I'm not going to want to sleep with him, because I'm
Right.
not gonna, like, you know, like I'm not going to want to be that bitch who's like, oh yeah, I wrote that, but then I did it anyway.
Right.
So I wrote this song where I essentially told him no, where I was like, no, I see where you're being selfish. I see where you're setting me up for failure and heartbreak and pain, and I don't want to do that anymore. And I wrote that song, and literally my life changed overnight. Like literally within 48 hours of my even starting, like I haven't even finished the song yet. I just wrote like the first verse and the chorus, and literally my life changed, just boom, just like that, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, it was, I won't get into the whole story, but it was like, it was just wild. So shamanic rock star was kind of, that's like the long way of saying where that came from. I was like, that was essentially a way of saying that, that I understand that when I'm creating music, I'm trying to clear out everything that is in the way of bringing through that divine flow state in my performance, but also that when I'm writing lyrics, I'm literally creating the reality in front of me. And I know it sounds weird, it sounds super strange to talk about, but
No,
everything
everything
I wrote about on my album came true.
You know what? It doesn't, it's not strange. It's not weird. Let me tell you, my listeners are all about that. And I'm sure the people, you know, that love you are all about it too. You and I have a lot in common, and I don't want to keep bringing it back to me. So we need to have like coffee chats or some shit like that sometime.
Yeah, that would be rad. I would love that.
Yeah, because really, it's not weird at all. It's actually quite normal in my reality. So, yeah, I love it. I love that. And everything that was happening, it was magic that happened. You decided, you stepped, and you were aware of it. And that's what I feel like, this is where grace comes in for everyone listening out there. Grace for yourself comes into this point when the universe, spirit, goddess, whoever you choose to identify your light with, but when you set an intention, an opportunity will be presented to you on whether or not you truly are intending to do that. And when, you know, she had that intention, she was aware of it. Now the fact that she was aware, she could take those different responses, those different choices, those different action steps. She wrote the song, she was aware that she no longer wanted that. She had that confidence, she had that that discernment. That's one of the words that I want to talk about. She had that discernment to realize what was going on, but she didn't beat herself up over it. You know what I'm saying? I think this is where so many women fall to the side. They start to beat themselves up over and over about, I should have known, I should have known, I should have known. Well, you didn't, and now you do.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
I actually learned a really great lesson about beating yourself up from BDSM, believe it or not.
I can imagine.
You know, there was this woman who was a submissive, like I was back in the day, and she had made a mistake with her dominant or whatever, something about their luggage or not packing the right thing or whatever, and they're on their way to the airport, and she's still like beating herself up, and she's like clearly like visibly upset that she's made this mistake.
Right.
And her dominant turns to her and says, "Why are you wasting my time over it?" And she was like, oh shit, oh okay, so what I'm supposed to be doing is moving forward in the best way possible. And if you just take out like this idea of a human dominant and substitute like God or the universe,
right,
or yourself,
oh, you're
like,
right.
I'm like, I say that to myself now. I'm like, Arden, why are you wasting my time? Why are you wasting my time beating yourself up over shit that you can't change? Are you going to get your shit together and be better in the future? Like, how long do you need to stew in this to optimally learn the lessons? Like,
Right.
as long as you like stew in it, if it's going to help you change. But it's like, it's almost like, you know, when you're like making candles, you know, like you dip the wax you dip the wick into the big vat of wax,
Right.
and you have to pull it out right away so that the wax coats it. Because if you leave it in, the wax will keep the wax you've already put on the wick will melt off.
Right.
So it's like you dip in like just long enough to get the lesson, and then like you come out, you know?
Well, that's funny, but that's a different way my husband talks about it. He's really big on talking to me in visuals like you are. So it's really fantastic, but he describes it, you know, Erica Badu's Bag Lady song.
Oh, no, I'm not familiar with it. I know I'm familiar with her as an artist, but not that song.
Okay. This is part of her Mama's Gun album, I think. But the song is Bag Lady, and I think you would love it. But he describes it like, you know, you keep picking up your bag. You know, are you going to keep picking up the bag and carrying it, or are you just going to drop the bag and let's go on? You know, and if you picked up the bag, you know, that flavor is going to be different now, right? It tastes different, it feels different, and now you can drop the bag faster. And he said this to me in a much more like, "Are you going to drop the fucking bag or what?" You know, but it was like,
Yeah.
mind fucking blown, holy shit, you know. So I love that, and it's true. There's so much. I have a different theory on time. I believe that time doesn't exist, but in the retrospective of the human existence right now, the calendar time, the psychological time, you are wasting psychological time, constantly stewing. The stew's going to go bad. You can't keep the stew forever, and it's. I think it's getting in there, getting into the muck. And I think that's where a lot of people too, they'll try to bypass it. I mean, spiritual bypassing is like a fucking crazy thing happening right
Oh,
now
Jesus,
because,
totally.
you know, it's
Yeah,
like, I'm just going to light a
whitewashing.
candle and I'm going to meditate, but I'm not going to actually get in and do the shadow work. And then that's what the stew is, everybody. It's the shadow work, and it's going in there and realizing that there is shadow to deal with and work through and connect with and align with and become friends with, and all of that. So
Yeah, I see people in the spiritual community who seem to be wearing it like a subculture, the same way that I wore the mantle of seduction. You know, that they're
mm,
just like, they're just looking for an identity or whatever, that they're not doing the work. And you know, I don't want to be judgy about that either, because certainly there was a long time that my shadow wasn't available to me either, that I was doing what I thought was the right thing, but was actually, you know, just complete patriarchal conditioning. So I'm
oh
not
my gosh,
judging that,
yes.
but it is hard. Like, you want to go and you want to go and you want to find those communities where people are actually doing the work. And just because someone's got their yoga pants and is meditating all the time, you know, that can be an addiction too. That can also
Absolutely.
be a way of avoiding yourself. You know, some people, anything can be a medicine and anything can be a poison. You know, I use kink as a way of bypassing my shadow. Other people can use meditation and spirituality and light washing to just be like, I'm just going to go on all these retreats and I'm going to avoid ever actually moving forward and creating a life of my own, or whatever. And it's actually kind of depressing when you get to that space, because you're like, where do like, it becomes so much of a deeper hunt to find your people, you know, to find your tribe.
Yes.
So yeah.
Oh, you know, I love it. It's funny. We could talk for days and days and days because there's so many amazing things that you brought up, and I take notes a lot when I talk, and I write down keywords of things that really just kind of like come at me. First of all, when you said chaos magician, all I saw was Jeff Goldblum, and I just got all sorts of tingly because. But you were talking about dark desires and how people are afraid to actually understand or look into their dark desires, and me working really a lot with women and their sexual shame, releasing that sexual shame, really tapping into and tying into their creative energy, and understanding the sexual life force. And that's what I wanted to bring up too before I forget. We can come back to this, but
Mm.
you talked about how you, at this moment in time, you are such a, you know, you are pro for fantastic sex and sexual life and on energy and all that stuff like that, but you're not really having a lot of sex or until you feel inspired, and that's because you're so much more aligned with your natural, the true sexual life force energy that we have running through us. The inspiration comes from the creation, and the inspiration to have sex does come from the connection. And that's why, a lot of people get confused on when you're talking about sexual energy or things like that. They think it's just sex. No, sex is a huge major part of that. But, feeling inspired for the connection and understanding that having sex with somebody, you really are interchanging energies, you're interchanging DNA, you're interchanging cells, you're interchanging so many things that you don't see on a day-to-day human basis. And understanding that that's a fantastic way to understand and learn how to become closer to your sexual energy, and realize that you can transmute that energy into creation, into your desires into that creation. So I feel like I kind of rambled that a bit, but that was something I really wanted to touch on, because I think so many people it's just learning, it's understanding the difference between sexual healing in a relationship in the physical part of it, and then sexual energy, and understanding the connection and utilizing that, and then tapping into the fun, kinky, physical part of it to expand more with it.
Sure. And I like to, I like to bring nuance to that discussion as well, because I feel like, I don't think that this is what you're doing, obviously, because, we've kind of already talked about this in the, we already laid that groundwork, like in the beginning of the episode, but I see where there's a lot of people who use like that sort of pseudoscience of like, oh, the female body will carry like male DNA in it, and from like everyone she's ever had sex with or whatever, which, first off the bat, I'm like, this is 2018. Who's not using condoms?
Right.
But also, that rhetoric I know gets used to, to shame people, to shame sex workers and everything like that too. So, so my keyword is I always come back to discernment. I always come back to, how is this making you feel? If you want to hoe it up with if you have a whole bunch of people in your life who are making you feel amazing, who are taking care of you and making sure that they leave you in better condition than they found you, then amazing, like do that. Just like, it's hard to find that nowadays because our sexuality is so rampant with toxicity, but it's really not about the amount of sex you're having. It's really about discerning who you're letting into your field. And it's the same way with food. It's the same way with the media we consume. It's like, are you taking, and this is actually where, when you said before we started recording, if I had like sort of an action step or an exercise that I would want to give to everyone. So that kind of, this kind of segues into that, if we want to go there.
Yeah, let's do it. Right. Yeah.
Okay, great. So one of the things that I recommend to all my students is, keeping a journal or using an app. There's an app called Mood Meter. That's the one that I used when I still needed an app to keep track of this. Now I kind of do it naturally. But whether you use the app, any app that you might find, or whether you just use a journal, you keep a journal of what your moods are. And, where, on Mood Meter, they do it like this XY axis, where the top half is like high energy and the bottom half is low energy. And the left half is like negative emotion, and the right half is positive emotion. So like positive high energy would be like happy, enthusiastic, excited, and negative low energy would be like depressed, lethargic, high energy negative would be like angry, rageful, and low energy happy, low energy positive would be like blissed out, mellow, relaxed, whatever. And so you kind of pick where you are on that XY axis. And then the important part is you examine what is it you were doing immediately before this, because essentially, our impact bias, I want to say Dan Harmon was the one who gave a TED talk on impact bias. And what he says essentially is human beings are terrible predictors of how things are going to make us feel. Like, we set an alarm in the morning, we're like, I'm going to go to the gym, and then we're like, fuck it, I don't want to go to the gym, I want to sleep in. But then after like if we had just gone to the gym, we'd be back like 2 hours from now, and we'd have so much energy to start our day with. Whereas if we sleep in, then we feel lethargic, we feel guilty for not going to the gym, we feel like we didn't do what we wanted to do. But it's like that snooze button says, like, the snooze button is like, no, you're going to be happier if you hit the snooze button. And it's actually not true. So once we realize that we're terrible predictors of what actually makes us feel certain emotions. We also we go back to toxic partners thinking they're going to make us feel better. And then we end up feeling shitty all the time. And we're like, why? We're like, why does my life suck? I have no idea. And really it's because we have not achieved our emotional self-mastery yet. We don't know which things are going to make us feel which ways. So if that is the one exercise that has had the biggest impact on my life, other than also learning the power of setting intention and, changing my lyrics to to be about better kinds of relationships. But yeah, keeping that mood journal or using the app. And then, like I said, the important part is, what were you doing immediately before this that caused you to feel this way? And soon you can be like, okay, what way do I want to feel? What did I do the last time I felt this way? I went and ate sushi with a friend, I did XYZ or whatever. And oh my gosh, when you can hack that, you can crack your business, you can crack everything, because you're like, if I need to feel in flow and get a ton of work done today, if I'm going to be writing 2 chapters of my book or something, then maybe for lunch, I want to go to coffee with a friend, because having a coffee is going to make all of the words come out easier, and talking to my friend is going to get me into that flow state. So, it's like, again, you're just curating. It's like I've gone from curating this is all ties it together now. I've gone from curating emotional experiences for other people to curating emotional experiences for myself in order to optimize the kind of state that I want to be able to put myself in order to create a life that I love.
God, I wish it was Wednesday, because then I could call you my Wednesday crush.
Oh, well, I can be your Wednesday crush anyway. It'll be midnight somewhere.
That's right. It is midnight somewhere. I know, it's funny. I've got so many amazing, gorgeous, beautiful women coming on, and it's like, I just love you all. I love that. And I love that challenge. That's definitely something that I think everybody should do, because when you become aware, then you can, when you know better, you do better. When you do better, you be better. When you be better, you have better. And, that's a fantastic thing. And I know I work with my planner. I have kind of feels about it right now, and we won't get into the white supremacy thing, but I have a Danielle Laporte planner, and every morning there's a prompt, but I don't really go through the prompts. I just kind of use it for paper. But what I do love about it is it's the core desired feelings. And so I always ask myself, how do I want to feel today? How do I want to feel this morning? And then what can I do? Or how can I take action, to feel that way? And then how can I allow myself to receive what the universe is giving me, right? How do I stay in receptive mode, as Abraham Hicks calls it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's such a, man, just doing simple things like that can really can absolutely change your life. I have to wrap up, because I've got like a 2:00 thing.
Absolutely.
But I'm so grateful for our conversation today. This was really terrific, and I hope we were able to cover everything that you wanted to cover today, or that even if we didn't, that, what happened.
We had a fantastic time. I really loved it. And I want to let you go. I do have 3 little questions I'd love to ask, and then let you jump off. So first of all, what's your sign?
I am an Aquarius, Gemini rising.
Nice. I love it. What was the last thing you searched on Google?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I'd have to look that up. I feel like, I looked up which alt-right march was canceled due to credible threats of violence from the left. Because I was having a debate where apparently, what people are saying is that it's really hard to get the alt-right to stop their hate marches with only peaceful tactics, but you don't have to actually resort to violence. There just has to be a credible enough threat that they will, if there is enough people who appear to be mobilizing, Antifa or whoever, who if they think that they're gonna get punched in the face, then they won't show up, and they'll cancel their rallies. But The important part is you don't have to actually punch them in the face. You just have to make them believe that you're going to.
Right. Yeah. That's actually a move in a combat workout that I do. It's called the fake out. And
nice.
yeah. I love that. That's great. And that's so many topics that, man, I can't wait to dive even deeper and deeper with so many amazing other goddesses too. I know the white supremacy is something and is really big right now, especially with Layla's challenge that just completed. But
yeah.
All right, last question, I'll let you go. What song embodies you in this moment in time right now in this existence?
The artist name is Lissie. I think it's Lissie.
Mm-hmm.
And the song is Wild Wild West. And I believe it's the remix off of the Twin Peaks soundtrack.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's that oh yeah, the lyrics of the chorus are I've been living my life on the edge, slip and fall if I take one more step. There's safety in numbers, I guess, but I'm going rogue in the wild wild west. And there's even like in the verse or something, it's like all that you lost you get back, and all that you are you can have. Like there's a place where you get, it's essentially talking about shedding your programming and shamanic soul retrieval, but it's done in this like sexy Twin Peaks remix. It's like I fucking love, oh my god, we could have a whole other conversation about like shamanic messages in mainstream music.
Well, then we'll have you back on the show to do that. Yeah, we'll definitely have you back on the show and talk about that.
Oh my god, amazing. I would love that. But yeah, it's a great song. So it's it's definitely like my soundtrack to shedding all of my bullshit and losing friends along the way, as you do.
Yeah, right. I know. It's like if I can count the friends I have left on one hand.
Yeah, precisely.
Well, thank you
so much. Yeah.
Yes,
and on my social media, by the way, on all platforms, yes. I'm at Arden Sirens, ARDEN SIRENS. My website is sacredsirens.com, and my band is Arden and the Wolves, and we're on pretty much any platform you can find us, like iTunes, Spotify, Apple Music, whole nine yards.
I love it. Thank you so much, Arden, for your time. And you have a fantastic rest of your day. And everybody out there, we'll catch you on the next episode. Later.